And I'm joined now by Hongbin, Chief Economist for HSBC in China. Hongbin, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
How much of a threat do you see from protectionism, as the Premier talked about today?
Actually, you know what, the overall tone of the speech by the Premier is quite positive. They basically, it's very interesting to see the Premier to emphasize on the difficulties and challenges ahead, rather than try to proud of themselves of the achievement they have so far. So which given me even more comfort in terms of the ability to manage the economy during the course of the year 2010.
Still, major challenges remain, Hongbin. The government has to control property prices. It has to control inflation. Will it manage to do this?
Well, I think the problem, there's a lot of problem, and the nature of a problem this year in China is very different from problem they faced last year. So they really need to do a quick shift in terms of policy tactics in order to address this problem. Obviously, I mean, it's been more challenging for them to manage the inflation and overheating than they try to stimulate the growth. So I think, yes, it is indeed quite a challenging job for them to do. But I do see they has a few quite effective policy tools available for them to use in order to address this problem. So I will still give them benefit of doubt for them to really address these problems during the course of next few quarters.
And he said many times, and at least two occasions, that China's growth was unsustainable and unbalanced. When will we see this adjustment towards consumption rather than investment?
The government clearly recognized the problem. They are trying to address that issue, but it would take time. I think probably where it's unrealistic for us to see China to shift to the consumption-driven economy in the next 2 to 3 years. I think it would take probably, it's going to be, if anything, it's going to be middle-term to long-term kind of the issues.
I mean, Harvard professor Ken Rogoff says that the debt-fueled bubble could send growth to as low as 2%. I mean, do you believe that?
Well, I can't remember when China last time had that sort of low growth. Probably it's back to 40 or 50 years ago. Surely, every economy has its own life cycle. China has been growing by nearly 10% for 30 years. So at some points in the future, we like to see some kind of a bumpy or kind of corrections in terms of growth. But in terms of if you ask me whether we're going to see that in the next 3 to 5 years, I will see probably the chance is pretty small.
How important is it, the fact that President Hu Jintao and other leaders are nearing the end of their tenure? So there's obviously going to be elections coming up in the next year or two. Is that an obstacle to reform?
Well, I think basically, actually, not necessarily. I think the fact that they're going to come to the tenure in 2 to 3 years' time, which actually put a bit of pressure for them to perform well. I think from that perspective, probably they got to work harder to make sure that basically the economy is going to remain quite stable. At the same time, they try to basically to dealing with any issue which is basically quite pressing for the Chinese economy.
Hongbin, thanks very much for joining us today.